So let's kick off this thing with let's kick off this thing with MGM. So lots of stuff over the weekend around MGM. Lots of rumors. The 8K was filed very had really no meat to it, which kind of led me to go through and research this a little bit more. And now we have a lot more detail. One, we know that the ESXi servers were encrypted in this ransomware attack, meaning the VMware hypervisors, or over 100 hypervisors, were taken down and were infiltrated as part of this ransomware attack. This ransomware attack is attributed to Black Cat or Alpha V. I think Alpha V is what it is. They did confirm that one of their adverts carried out the MGM attack, saying it wasn't the same actor that it wasn't the same actor that hacked Western Digital. There's a few different names for this specific threat actor. Black Cat said that MGM Resorts remained silent on the provided communication channel, indicating that the company had no intention to negotiate a ransom payment. But then there's an additional piece to that, which is the Okta agent sync was actually one of the vectors here. So, I'm an aviation fanatic. And one thing you always learn when you read some of the disasters that happen in the air, or some of the mistakes, is it's a series of mistakes that lead a plane to go down, not just one, but a series of them. One mistake you can survive, two mistakes you can potentially still make it. But when it becomes a series of mistakes and it becomes a chain reaction, it just gets really bad. And by all evidence at this point, some of it from the threat actors, none of it from MGM, meaning it can't be really corroborated, we now know that there was a chain of issues, a chain of challenges that took place that led to the successful exploitation and ransomware attack on MGM Resorts International. And this kind of went on because, well, one, they abused Okta for credential stuffing. That's number one. MGM shut down all of their networks, including every single one of their Okta sync servers, after learning that something was lurking there, sniffing passwords of people, and maybe they couldn't crack them, but they definitely got some access there. The threat group said that through the Okta sync issue, they were able to get into over 1,000 ESXi hypervisors on September 11th. And they tried to get in touch with MGM, obviously, to try and secure something there. It did not happen. Okta CSO David Bradbury confirms the cyber attack at MGM had a social engineering component, but adds it was successful because the threat actors were sophisticated enough to deploy their own IDP and user database into the Okta system, which then leads to believe that there's some specific vulnerability or some specific lack of visibility within your IDP agents, where someone can essentially add a whole slew of users with a whole various levels of permissions without it triggering some alarm somewhere or some notice somewhere to that extent. Not that familiar with the Okta system and Okta Sync, so I can't really speak to that in great detail. But nonetheless, that appears to be one of the issues here, is the fact that they were able to compromise their IDP, add users into their IDP and high privileged users to do that, and then take it from there. Okta has warned about this previously, but there's now MFA abuse to go to that. And we've talked a lot. When I was at Black Hat, one of the things I said in one of the interviews I had, I believe it was with Adaptive Shield with Mauer Bin, was identity's the new endpoint. And that's so very true, especially now that we look at the MGM breakdown. It all started, it kind of, Okta was a springboard in addition to everything else. The ESXi hypervisors were likely behind the CVE, which is why it was so easy to take advantage of them. Right? We constantly talk about these, and this is significant, right? So like, keep this in mind. This is extremely significant. Google, for their end, Google-owned Mandiant says that the financial motivation behind the threat actors was expanding their targets as well as monetization strategies. The hacking group had targeted at least 100 organizations. These are the guys behind Octopus, ScatterSwine, and Spider. Sorry, that most of their targets were in the U.S. or Canada. The group typically engages in SMS phishing campaigns, but has likely broadened its skills. Again, they're going after the endpoints we don't always look to defend. Okay. And I see some of your comments here. Yes, Okta source code was stolen a year ago. Microsoft 3 years ago. These things matter. These things have long-term impact. You don't see it the next day. We're in an instant gratification type of mentality as this generation. But these threat actors are patient, and they go in, they steal it, they discover vulnerabilities, and they pick a target where they know they can have the most success, where they're most likely to get paid and make a name for themselves. And that's exactly what they did. But they've also made a huge target on their backs. If you don't think every single law enforcement agency in the world is after these guys, you're very, very wrong. Plus, they're in it to the MGM family. And I don't need to give you the stigma around casinos, do I? You know, I have a feeling this is going to end up like Ocean's 12. Once these guys get caught, they're either going to get caught by law enforcement or by someone coming and knocking on the door going, you owe me $30 million plus interest. So we'll figure out that stigma at some point or another. But again, to summarize this is a chain reaction of really challenges that exist within our environment. And every practitioner goes through this. Every practitioner, every single one of you who practices the science, the art of cybersecurity, every single one goes through this. You've got multiple vulnerabilities. You've got multiple challenges. You're running multiple projects simultaneously. And if one isn't deployed correctly, if one isn't, if all of your T's aren't crossed, if all of your I's aren't dotted, if some of this stuff just remains open and the right threat actors get in with the right skill and it's the perfect storm, you end up with a situation like what MGM has been going through for the last week. And we're not smart a week later, right? The real postmortem on this attack is going to be probably at Black Hat next year. That's really when we're going to see the real postmortem, because the postmortem is how much do they have to rebuild? How much of their environment was really compromised? How many projects and how many layers of their IT tech stack was compromised in this that requires so much more?